Well, thank you for that introduction. Actually, I'm a recovering CI officer, so I'm still trying to get that stuff out of me. It's good to be obviously amongst friends. That's always nice, because when you present this amongst people that are not necessarily pro-Constitution, it can be a little risky. So thank God for Georgia. What I like to do is this presentation is very concerning. It's very heavy. It's very shocking. Some of you probably are going to be shocked by the end. I'm giving a non-political presentation, just fact after fact after fact. So there's not going to be any politics in this, and that's on purpose. But I think what you're going to see is we are in a serious state in this country regarding the erosion of our Constitution. And hopefully this is a call to action to everyone. But what I like to do is start off with a little humor to lighten it up a little bit, because it's going to be so heavy. So I like to tell a joke called The Five Surgeons. It goes like this. 5 surgeons from big cities are discussing who makes the best patients to operate on. The first surgeon from New York says, I like to see accountants on my operating table, because when you open them up, everything inside is numbered. The second from Chicago responds, yeah, but you should try electricians. Everything inside of them is color-coded. The third surgeon from Dallas says, and let me know if, can you all hear me okay back there? Okay. The third surgeon from Dallas says, no, I really think librarians are the best. Everything inside of them is in alphabetical order. The fourth surgeon from Los Angeles chimes in, you know, I like construction workers. Those guys always understand when you have a few parts left over. But the fifth surgeon from Washington, D.C. shut them all up when he observed, yeah, you're all wrong. Politicians are the easiest to operate on. There's no guts, no heart, no testicles, no brains, no spine. Plus, the head and the rear are interchangeable. Now, you probably figured out I cleaned that one up a little bit. I changed a couple words towards the end there. Let me begin, before we get to the slides, by saying this. We are now in a post-constitutional government. And I'll explain why as we go through these slides. We all love the Constitution. It's the foundation of the greatest nation in the history of the world. But we are now in a post-constitutional government. We are no longer adhering our government to the Constitution that it's supposed to uphold and protect. The majority of our politicians have become, unfortunately, neo-statists, not constitutionalists. They're no longer standing for the Constitution, with the exception of a couple of very good names in this room, which I've heard tremendous things about in other meetings. They're no longer standing for the Constitution, they're standing for re-election. Some of them have been re-elected. They've been in office for 12 terms. They're more concerned about that than taking the risk that some of the folks we've seen lately take, which I think is going to pay off. We own property, including sheds and barns on Andy and Todd, my son and daughter-in-law, her mother. We own property, sheds, barns, and other things, but if we don't pay a tax on that property, they will come and take that away from us. Our land, our sheds, that one slipped through real silently years and years ago. Our phone calls, internet use, social media, and the addresses of our friends, families, business associates, all are being surveilled by the government daily, to the tune of 1.5 billion records per day. And we'll talk about that as we go through the slides. Our government now breaks into Americans' homes without a warrant, then lies about it under oath a number of times. I'll talk about that. Government denies that we have drones in the skies. They are now in the skies with an operation for law enforcement over U.S. soil. There's at least 35 of them operating now. The government is spying on and threatening members of the news media, Fox News, Associated Press, and others. Who would have ever thought that would happen? That's chilling. They lied about that. Our government has used the massive power of the IRS to target and intimidate freedom groups. We all know about that one. We'll talk about some of the details some people may not know. The CIA is providing weapons and support to Islamic jihadists bent on establishing an Islamic world caliphate. You remember Afghanistan? The rebels in Libya and in Syria, their goal is not to establish a democracy in Syria. If you read their writings, and if you read what they've stated they want to do, they want an Islamic caliphate blended into a worldwide government. I'm going to prove that today by their own statements. We need to understand that. You could call that a threat to national security. The CIA and the NSA engage in secret operations in secret budgets. Our tax dollars are being spent on operations like providing arms to rebels in Syria. In secret, we can't even know how much they're spending. Those are our tax dollars. Has anybody asked you if you'd like to give arms to rebels in Syria and gotten your approval for that? No, and we're paying for that because it's secret and we have no right to know what they're doing. Is that constitutional? No. And you're going to see how extensive that is as we go on, and it's quite shocking. The government uses secrecy to conceal its unconstitutional activities, and it even conceals these activities from the United States Congress, our most important legislative branch. This secret government, the intelligence agencies, one of which I come from the belly of the beast, I used to work for, conceals information from Congress with impunity, calling it classified. The president supports foreign regimes that promote radical ideology and openly persecute Christians and Jews. I'll talk about that. They were killing Christians in Egypt, and did anybody ever hear about that? When the Morsi government, some may have. Did our government tell us about that? No. The administration, I will prove this with some statements, the administration openly attacks religious freedom, specifically Christianity. That is their prime target, just a fact. And the foundation of the Constitution, which is Christianity. Our president, when quoting the Declaration of Independence, has left the word creator out of his quotes 7 times. Now, I have to mention, I've seen a Samuel Adams beer commercial lately, and they did the same thing. We've all been endowed with certain unalienable rights, left the creator out. That's where our culture is right now. I'm not a heavy-duty beer drinker, but I know which beer I'm not going to drink, if I do. Our government is now full speed on the path to tyranny. The Obama administration mocks that word. It mocks tyranny, because it has to. In a commencement speech before a university, the president got up and said, don't pay any attention to these people who talk about tyranny. Essentially, they're just narrow-minded people who don't really get it. Well, when a president has to come out and convince people that he's not engaged in tyranny, why should he have to do that? Did Ronald Reagan ever bring that up? No. Usually you have to deny what you're doing. I wish I didn't have to give this lecture. In doing so, and especially writing the book, I'm taking a significant personal risk on several fronts. I adore this country. And as a federal agent, a former police officer, I was sworn to uphold the Constitution. That made this the greatest country in the world. I cannot sit back and do nothing. And if you read the sacrifices that the Founding Fathers made when they formed this country, shame on us if we sit on our couches and do nothing. There's internet stuff out there saying, people saying I'm going to wind up in a dumpster and things like that. Well, I came from a dumpster, so I'm not worried about that. I want to especially thank you for your prayer before we begin. That is so critical. That is how we win. America was founded on prayer, and America is going to begin again on prayer. There is a massive amount of research behind these slides. I've worked on these since From the Company of Shadows was released in September of 2009, well before Snowden came out. We were lecturing on some of this, not in the detail that he gave, but on some of it. But let's talk about this. America, the constitutional crisis. Now we have spying on us, these massive federal agencies, massive, using our tax dollars. The Department of Justice, IRS, FBI. Most people don't know that the United States Postal Service is scanning both sides of every piece of mail we send to and from our families and recording that in a database. Department of Homeland Security, I'll get into that. Affordable Care Act, God help us. I will get into only the constitutional aspects of the ACA, not the nuts and bolts. I'll get into the constitutional aspects because those are pretty chilling. The Environmental Protection Agency, is approving liberal groups faster than conservative groups, and they're denying land purchases and other things from conservative groups, and that has been documented. The CIA, as I mentioned, is using our tax dollars to send arms to Islamic jihadist rebels overseas. When I get into the Muslim Brotherhood and their influence on the United States government, That's usually when the room gets real quiet. Okay, the NSA, I think we kind of all got a handle on that one, but there's more than you know about that. This is a statement that's attributed to Thomas Jefferson. Now, the left will come out and say, Thomas Jefferson never said this. And indeed, in the records in Monticello, this doesn't exist. It's a quote publicly, verbally, that he made. However, it is so true, I put it up there. When people fear their government, there's tyranny. When the government fears the people, there's liberty. Our government needs to fear us. We're the people. They need to fear the power that the people has over what they're doing. If they don't, well, as they haven't, we'll have the monster in Washington that we have now. And after the session is over, I think we'll probably have the time. I'll take questions from everybody, and then you can just fire away. And so we'll keep going. The summary. The Constitution is under attack. Specifically, the First and Fourth Amendments have been gutted. I'm going to talk very briefly about the Second Amendment because I got a whole nother lecture on that one. And we just don't have the time today. So I'll touch on that just very briefly. The USA Patriot Act I'm going to get into in detail. And I will explain what that did to our Constitution. Most people don't know. 70 congressmen and senators didn't know when they signed the bill and didn't read it. I'll talk about the CIA, what they're doing, the FBI, the NSA, and the DHS, as I mentioned. I'm going to talk about the secret Patriot Act. There is a Patriot Act that we know about, but there's a secret Patriot Act in the intelligence communities that they're using that we don't know about. Their own interpretation of what they can do under the Patriot Act, we the people, and most congressmen and senators don't know the wording of that secret Patriot Act and the authority they've been given to enter into Americans' privacy. The state secrets privilege. How many people have heard of the state secrets privilege in this room? About 5, 6 maybe. Good for you. That's chilling. You need to know about that and how it's used. NSA is using that right now to shut down lawsuits about its domestic spying program. This is a hidden privilege. And I'm going to get into it in some detail because they are using this big time to shut down any dissent of what the government is doing. This one is probably going to maybe shock you a little bit. I'm going to demonstrate the Muslim Brotherhood penetration of the White House and some of the Muslim Brotherhood advisors of the President of the United States. All right, let's talk about this. CBS recently did a series. Did anybody see this? Let's Give Up on the Constitution, CBS's series. Yeah, well, during that series, they quoted Louis Michael Siedemann, professor of constitutional law at Georgetown University, one of our premium universities. And this is what he said, quote, "I've got a simple idea. Let's give up on the Constitution. Suppose that Barack Obama really was not a natural born citizen. So what? So instead of talking about whether gun control makes sense in our country, we talk about what people thought of it 2 centuries ago. In other words, it's old and outdated. We need to throw it out. It was written by old men who were bigots and narrow-minded." They're teaching this in the University of Virginia, and other major universities are teaching that the Constitution is outdated and actually stands in the way of progressive change in America. There are progressive thinkers. Anybody heard of the progressive movement? Yeah. If you haven't heard of it, set up a Google alert, progressivism, and just let the Google alerts come in and you'll see what these characters are up to. It's the undermining of the Constitution, specifically the Christian foundation. Pure and simple. We need to understand what they're doing, and they're active, and they're motivated, and they're funded. There is a cultural jihad. I'll talk about that. The Muslim Brotherhood, all the way up to the White House, are targeting Christian and secular groups opposing replacement of the Constitution. And what the Muslim Brotherhood and its supporters, the Islamic Society of North America, don't worry, I'm already in trouble with them. Their goal is to replace our Constitution with Sharia law by their own admission. I will show you their quotes from their organizational memorandums today where they come right out and say that because they have to. That's their commandment. Let's read this. We all know this, but we should read this regularly, especially in this briefing. Let's read it again. "Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press or the right of the people to peaceably assemble and to petition the government for the redress of their grievances."